All right, welcome to the first New Scott Shoot interview series. Today joining us in Tony Armstrong's apartment would be Tony Armstrong and Lincoln Steen. How are you guys doing today?
Are we breaking your shoot interview virginity today?
You are.
The proverbial hymen of the shoot interview? Clitoris? A little tickle?
Oh, it's just like the first time you lost your virginity 6 weeks ago.
Hey, your aunt was great.
Well,
All right. So, does everyone you want to go first? It's fine. How'd you get started in the wrestling business?
I suppose I'll start. Through high school, I was interested well, not even since high school. When I was 4 years old, my mother has quoted me as asking me, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? And my answer at 4 years old was, I want to be a professional wrestler. She asked my brother the same question. He said a dog, but whatever. So I played hockey growing up and all that good stuff. And, read comic books and watched wrestling religiously. And come through high school, I went to a Grand Prix show at the Halifax Forum Multipurpose Center where I seen guys like Chi-Chi Cruz and the Wild Man, Gary Williams, known as Wild Man Austin at the time. Joe Legend was there, Kurgan, Iron Man Cliff McDonald, Nature Boy Nelson, Nutsack Nelson. Leo Burke was working, Cuban Assassin, the Beast was around, and you know, I'm watching this and I'm realizing, you know, here's a bunch of guys who've been all over the world and they're in Halifax tonight. Tomorrow night they'll be in Berwick, the next night they'll be in, and I realized, you know, these guys, there's independent wrestling. That's when I first discovered independent wrestling. Because before that, all I knew was WWE and WWF at the time, WCW. And even ECW seemed like a kind of a far-out notion to me. I wasn't really familiar with it at all. So that's when I first realized, you know, well, maybe I can do it.
be in DX? Is that what you were?
Yeah, I was trying to be in DX. I was going to be the sixth member. Where was I? Oh, I was still in high school at the time, and you know, I told Dad that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to wrestle. He said, well, not till you graduate high school. Graduate high school first, and then you can do whatever you want. So 2 days after my graduation from high school, I called up Emile Dupre and asked him about his training. At the time, he wasn't doing any training. He wasn't going to be training anybody this year. So I was kind of down on myself. They said, you know, show up to the show in Elmsdale, or Lance it was, the rink. And you can help set up the ring and meet some of the guys and maybe make some connections that way. So here I am. I show up at the Sportsplex. I'm setting up chairs. And I run into another young aspiring wrestler known to people as Scott Savage, who was setting up the rings exclusively for Grand Prix that summer. And we got talking, and I said, you know, this is what I wish. And he's like, yeah, I know that Neil's not training guys this year, but I've been going down to Sheet Harbor where a guy had a ring set up, and he gave me the guy's phone number, and I called him, and 2 weeks later, me and Scott were both down there in the ring working out together. It's pretty much how I got my official start to getting into the ring.
Tony?
Do the girls wrestle?
Yeah, I kind of got fleeced.
How'd you get in the phone?
I got fleeced from the business. Stereotypical fucking. This guy, he kind of looks like a wrestler. He offers cheap training. It's like, wow, fuck. This is an awesome way to break into business. And it's always the old saying, too good to be true. Well, it was. The guy ended up to be a complete fucking retard. And most of the people around him.
Do the girls wrestle?
If I would have taken the minute to step back and take a look, I would have realized how fucking stupid it was. Eventually, we got in contact with the same promoter that Steve over here hooked up with. Went down and started training through there. And by this point, Steen had enough experience, he was able to start showing me some stuff. And it just went from there. See, it took me 2 minutes to say what I had to say. Steen talked for about an hour and a half.
That's because I'm awesome.
Yeah, you're fucking moron.
Now to continue on with my story about how I get now.
When you, Tony, first started, when you decided to go with unnamed promoter.
Which one?
There was a when you first started wrestling. There was also another school that was training guys, the Real Action Wrestling School. Why did you choose them over such guys as you went to go see every week?
What was I a moron? Pretty much economics. I was trying to pay my first year through university just without having to take out a student loan. I really didn't have the $2,500 to throw down for training. Not a matter that I didn't know it would have been a better school. It was just a simple matter of economics.
Your story bores me.
Yeah. So,
So Steen,
Yo,
how's your sister?
I'll kill you.
down in Sheet Harbor, what was the training like when you first went down there? Started working out in the ring with Scott Savage.
Honestly, as far as what I've seen from training sessions I've attended, you know, as an instructor, I came to the realization that when I was down there, by today's standards, what I did wasn't considered to be really training. I went down there and with my amateur background from the high school, hitting the mat wasn't a big deal for me. Locking up wasn't a big deal. It was just basically like, okay, you lock up a little bit differently, but essentially it was everything we did. I had to rely on my own knowledge of wrestling from the amateur perspective to really throw myself in the ring along and get better that way. And as evident from my first few matches, it's plain as day is to see is that I relied heavily on my amateur wrestling background and much more towards my gimmick, which was a wet floor is hardcore. I carried the wet floor sign in the ring and was pretty much I was pretty much booked in hardcore matches. I was going to be the hardcore guy because during this entire
this. He had this gimmick where he was like Steen. He had a shirt and it said Steen on it, so that was his gimmick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jackass. But essentially, like, I'd get into the ring and rely on hitting people with objects and mixing it in with my amateur wrestling at some point. And I was going to be that hardcore guy for this particular promotion at the time. And all in all, for me, I was like, well, I'm going to be a professional wrestler. This is obviously a step I have to take. But the reason I was the hardcore guy is because I was the guy that was tough. I was the guy that when we were down in Sheet Harbor, when we weren't in the ring, and we were out having a few drinks. I was 18 at the time. Having a few drinks and going to beer gardens and different festivals and stuff that was going on during the weekends I was down there. That, you know, I kind of garnered a reputation of being this crazy, tough guy that could just, you know, dish it out as well as I could take it. And that's how I pretty much got booked all the time.
How hard is it to suck your own dick, Steve?
That was fairly easy. You twist me up like a pretzel cat, I'm not sure.
You credit Vance Nevada and Eddie Watts with teaching you how to wrestle. But you were in the ring before you met either one of them. Can you explain that?
I credit Watts and Vance a lot with teaching me how the business works.
More how to work than how to wrestle.
Well, yeah, essentially going into wrestling, I already knew how to wrestle. I knew, you know, how to apply an armbar. I knew how to, you know, take down a guy by the legs. I mean, clotheslines and body slams and suplexes. That stuff's the easy part. That was the stuff that came easy to me, at least. It was the psychology and the storytelling part, and really, you know, etiquette and that kind of stuff that I was taught more so from Vance and Eddie, and really, you know, credit Vance a lot where, you know, Vance is the guy who helped me get to a position where I was able to meet Eddie and get over with.
Tony, how did you leave your unnamed promoter and get involved with
Unnamed promoter too?
unnamed mainstream wrestling?
Mainstream wrestling? It's pretty much just a matter of me and another buddy of mine, and you know, Paco. We got a phone call, and just asked to come down so we can check it out. We thought not doing anything here. We kind of figured we finally had two and two together, realized that we were getting shammed. We went down and talked to the promoter, Devin Chittick, and he had he'd offered us a deal in training. And not to say it was any huge amount of training for the most part. We were trained for about 5 weekends and then thrown to the wolves. As you can tell by pretty much my whole first year. You're a fucking big fat wolf with a big fat stomach. So you can sit over there and shut your fucking mouth. Pretty much my whole first year, even my first year and a half really tells. I didn't really come to my own as an ability to work and to even call until I started getting more and more ring time with guys like Steen over here and Scott Savage.
Both of you guys started out with the same promoter, breaking in with mainstream wrestling at the start under Devin Chittick, but neither of you credit him for either of your training. Tony, you credit Steen and Jerry Martell. As mentioned earlier, Steen credits Vance Nevada and Eddie Watts.
Well, there's a, like I said, there's always a line between learning how to wrestle and learning how to work. Jerry Martell and Lincoln Steen taught me how to work. They taught me why you do things when you do and how it makes sense. Devin Chittick taught me the basics, just the ability of knowing like the very basics, like just corners and taking a buckle and basic stuff like that, backbones. And for the most part, I learned to bump on a basement floor. It was padding on it. It wasn't fucking pretty. It was probably 2 of those weekends weren't even in a ring. The last 3 were, and it was more or less just learning stuff done in the center and stuff like that. It wasn't a whole lot of actual. This is why things are done.
Essentially, the reason I don't credit Devin with my training is because during my time down there working out in the ring with him and Scott, he wasn't really trained either. I mean, he had teachings from Peter Faircloth, who was a man I thought did not exist for the longest time because I'd never seen him, never heard of him, never seen pictures, and Sledgehammer Spike, the aforementioned jackass who pretty much took
the shit out of
exactly, and he fleeced Devin too. And all in all, is we kind of all 3 of us figured out things as we went along. Scott had been traveling down to Florida for a few weeks at a time and training with Dory Funk Jr. at his school down there, and then working out with a lot of guys that to this day are still wrestling. But and basically me and Scotty working out in the ring together all the time led on to me and Scotty being the guys to have our first couple of matches against each other. It was me and Scott, me and Scott, me and Scott. After Scott, bam, Jerry Martell and Quincy Valentino come down, and it's me and Devin tagging up against those 2. I learned a lot in that match because I sat in the apron and watched Devin just get his ass handed to him. And it was after that I started getting a little bit more confidence in my abilities. It was 3 months later. Vance Nevada came down for Grand Prix Wrestling, and he came down 4 or 5 days earlier so he could work one of Devin's shows. And he brought himself, Mentolo, and Chris Paris. And those guys have all been in Winnipeg all the time and been wrestling for a few years. Vance started in '93, I believe.
Yep.
He had about 700-800 matches by the time he came down there. So here's somebody who's been around that was able to take me, the young punk I was, and sort of say, okay, this is how you put a match together, and we'll just work from here. And that's where I just started to pick up my ball and really come into my own, because all of a sudden I'm learning things on a fast rate, essentially. And basically the reason I don't credit Devin with my training is because essentially he wasn't trained at the time he was training me.
Okay. You were with Mainstream Wrestling for 4 years?
4 years.
4 years. You were with them since the very beginning till the spring of 2004. Now, when they were first starting out, they weren't doing that great, drawing crowds of very few. Was there at any point in time in there where you thought that this might not be for you, that is this really it?
At that point when I first broke in, and we did draw some great crowds in Sheet Harbor. the first 4 shows was never a night under 100 people, and then all of a sudden, bam, 1 week it was 40 people at the show, and then it jumped up a little bit more in the summer. But did I ever think that it wasn't for me? No, because I knew everybody had to start somewhere, and this was just where I had to start off. Wrestling in the proverbial bingo hall that used to be a swimming pool, for next to nothing, gas money. And that's essentially what it was. And I knew I was still getting experience, and my whole goals that I had set at that point was like, okay, I'll wrestle for Devon until Grand Prix starts back up, because I really wanted to wrestle for Grand Prix Wrestling, because essentially that was the wrestling company that I went to see every Monday night at the Halifax Ford Multipurpose Center when I was in high school. Those were the guys I wanted to wrestle for, so I had my goal set on working with that particular company.
Tony, you broke in about 2 years later, 2002?
Year and a half.
Year and a half. You broke in on the Totally Taylor road trip tour. Devon was drawn, Mainstream Wrestling was drawn, pretty good houses on that tour. What did you think of your initial impression?
Well, my first match was quite possibly the worst match in recorded history.
Every match you had was the worst match in recorded history.
You go fuck yourself, Steen. Brooklyn was a huge host for what I had heard and what I had heard around from a few of the guys. It's almost 200 people there.
We drew out that entire tour.
Outside of your hometown. Which
I will fight.
you were the hometown. You don't know, that was the tour.
Tell
Drew
it, Tony.
18 people. In your
Were we
hometown.
in
at
Enfield until the
Curly's.
Taylor tour?
Yes.
The day before Kingston, April
That's
April
right.
27th.
Yeah, the night of the Leafs game in the playoffs.
The night of the nobody wants to see Lincoln Steen.
The Enfield icon.
Yeah.
I still get called that, eh?
Yeah. But the crowds are really good. It was Steen and Scott had just gotten back from Winnipeg, and the boys from Ontario were down. It was just a really professional atmosphere. There was actually quite a few Canadian wrestlers got their start on that tour. In Ontario, Sean Morgan, who was still wrestling in Ash, who was wrestling for Border City, started off on that tour. And down here, Paco Loco had his first match on that tour. Myself, Scott Phoenix.
Who?
Yeah, sorry. the guy that married the dude.
Yeah.
But it was a good crowd the whole tour. It was different. It was a lot different than anything I'd ever seen, anything I really expected in the locker room. I learned a lot that week. Scott Savage pulled me aside, told me a lot of things that I hadn't learned up to that point.
Remember when Sean Morgan asked Scott Savage? He's like, no, let me show you how we lock up. Fuck, I lost him. That guy almost got killed. Sorry, continue.
No,
Oh, you're done?
Coming over from the Sledgehammer Spikes
outfit.
unnamed promotion, you were coming into a locker room that was run. Was it run a lot differently, or was it what you were used to, or?
There was people that actually ran the locker room. It was the locker room, which there's a lot more that a lot more professional atmosphere. People sat down and they talked, and you'd sit back and listen to people tell stories, and that's the kind of stuff where you actually learn. You learn how to react and how to act in the business by how people experiences others have had.
I'm going to regale you with a tale. Myself and Scott Savage had this, and New Scott has been involved in a few of these trips where these so-called fly-by-night, essentially backyard wrestling shows are taking place. Me and Scott...
How'd you get fucked yourself?
Me and Scott decided to check out one of the Sledgehammer Spike shows, which was, where was that show at?
Harrodsfield?
Harrodsfield.
Oh, aren't you fucking Captain
Harrodsfield. Thank you, New Scott. Harrodsfield. And Sledgehammer Spike, Leroy Brooks, knew me and Scott and said, it was good to see you guys here, don't worry about paying. I want you guys...
snuck in the side door!
No, we came in, anyways. We came up, he wanted us to come upstairs, we came upstairs, we met all the talent. And here's a young Tony Armstrong
Extremely
and a young Scott Phoenix.
Yeah,
What was it? You were Mr. Ego.
Yes.
and
At least
Sean Black. Was that Sean Black? Was the other? I
Yeah.
can't remember.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was.
It
But
was.
it's during intermission, we get outside, and here's these two young guys, wide-eyed, bushy-tailed, and Tony Armstrong, known as Mr. Ego, back then, takes a look at me and goes, "Is it true you really do a Van Terminator?"
Oh fuck, you're a big fat ass. Who'd expect you to actually jump across the room?
It was awesome. I never laughed so hard. And then it led to so much humor for me after that. I'm sorry, continue.
Oh, okay.
And yes, I can still do the Van Terminator.
Yeah.
Just not Pete's 18 foot ring. This break in the edit was courtesy of New Scott coughing. Continue.
Sorry. Shortly, actually, let's go back before the Totally Taylor road trip tour. Steen, you and Scott Savage went out for your first tour of Western Canada. You went on the infamous Tony Condello Northern Death Tour.
Ah, Candello.
Tell us about that, your experiences out there, and how you got hooked up with Tony Condello.
Well, Scott had worked with Vance over the summer doing a few shows at Grand Prix when he wasn't setting up the ring. And I knew Vance from the show he was on. And basically, me and Scott got to a point, it's like, there's nothing going on right out here with mainstream. Devin has no shows planned until at least the summer again at that time. And we just started looking at each other, like, I had nothing to do. I just stopped going to Dalhousie.
It's like you go to the gym.
Jackass. I just stopped going to Dalhousie University.
What happened?
I failed out of Dalhousie University because all I did was play Mega Man and drink.
Way to disgrace your family.
I tell you, I did a good
And
job.
what did you do in your 4 months at university?
What's that? Oh, get laid.
On campus. Did you live on campus?
Yeah.
Yeah, you lived on campus. So not only did you blow $5,000 tuition, you blew another $7,000 in,
Oh yeah. I blew a lot.
rent fees. Did you get your money back for second semester?
No, I was done. It took me a whole year to screw myself. I couldn't. It wasn't a 4-month job. It was a whole year.
Ooh, 8-month job is completely.
But I got that all paid off. But no, it was the end of 2001. I got laid off from work. I had nothing else going for me really at the time, so I just said, you know what?
No license.
Yeah, I had no license at that point either. Devin had no shows coming up.
Regale that story.
Don't worry, that story will come. I just want to get this thought out before I forget. Because he asked me about the West thing. Anyways, I had nothing going for me. I called Vince and Van. I said, listen, if you have nothing going on, I'm thinking about relocating. So he's like, okay, you guys can come out and stay at my place and we'll be out there. So it was January 15th. We flew to Winnipeg, and the next night, worked all of January until the second week of February was booked solid. It was at least every second night we had a show. Me and Scott took over ring crew duties because we needed a van. We drove the van and were able to make a little bit extra money off our POs by doing ring crew. We were out there for 4 months. During that time, Canelo came out to one of our shows at Chalmers on request of Vance Nevada. He had these two young guys from out east that wanted to get booked on his tour. So he came out and he liked the match. And we were still pretty young and not used to working for a promoter that we didn't know personally before it. So it got kind of shaky for a time because I thought Scott was booked, but I wasn't. And sure enough, I was booked and he would see me the next week. And sure enough, next week, Zach Mercury picked us up in his van and he would not shut up about his goddamn cassette tapes. And we were off to up north. 2 weeks of Battle Royals with Eddie Watts and Gigi Cruz. And only one of those nights was it really hell for me and Scott. And after that, they left us alone because they even had said, you guys are the guys who are smart and know what you're doing. The rest of these idiots have no clue what's going on.
Is it true you went to northern Winnipeg without a jacket?
That is correct. I got dropped off at the airport by my mother. I took my travel bags out of the back of the car. She looked at me in the rearview mirror and said, "Where's your jacket?" Because it was fairly mild in Nova Scotia at the time, and I said, I got enough sweaters and vests and stuff. I don't need it. So I went to Winnipeg in January with no coat.
Now, this was either before the Death Tour or after you worked a show with former WWE
Tatanka.
superstar Tatanka.
What a guy.
Was working a show. That was your first time being around any level of name talent, such as a guy that's been in the
Very
world
true.
wrestling entertainment. Was working a show or being on a show with him any different for you, or?
Not really. I mean, I've never had a thing I find with a lot of people. It's like they hear celebrity or star and they get like all wide-eyed and be like, wow, it's Tom Cruise or something like that.
You
like,
picked a guy.
Well, yeah, because I mean, like, seriously, like, you know, I've never been the ones like, I'm a big fan. I've never been a fanatic. So meeting him was like, you know, it's great to meet you.
And then sucked his dick.
Plus, at the time, that was offside. At the time,
His dick
we
was
had
that big.
Vance and I and Scott, before Vance went on the Can-Am tour, we went to the Sobeys, I can't remember, the Savies or something like that.
Dominion?
No, it wasn't Dominion. I can't remember. Fresh Mart? I have no idea. Anyways, we went to get groceries, and as we're buying like some water and stuff, we get to the bakery section, and I see these chocolate logs. It's like a giant Swiss log, chocolate dough with whipped icing in the center of it. So I bought one. Well, actually, Vance Nevada bought one because it was on sale, and he didn't believe I could eat it. He's like, you'll get sick. So I ate it. And this enthralled Vance Nevada to a point where the next night in the locker room, everybody was asking me about the chocolate log. The next week, Tatanka came in. And me and Scotty get to the venue early with Bobby J, get the ring set up. In comes the rest of the crew with Tatanka in tow. And Tatanka walks through all of them, comes directly over to me as I'm setting up the ring. And he taps me on the shoulder, and I was like, oh my god, like, you know, how you doing? I'm Lincoln Steen. He's like, yeah, I know. I just gotta ask you, what's this about this chocolate log thing? I'm hearing all of it. I'm like, oh my god. And then I just hear the laughter erupt from the boys. He's like, yeah, Tatanka knows about the chocolate log. He's gonna buy you one, watch you eat it. To tell you the truth, I don't think I ever got that chocolate log. Tatanka, you owe me a chocolate log.
Now, Tony, shortly after you started, February 2002, in May of that year, Scott Savage, Jeremiah Delinquent at the time, left the promotion he had been with since it started to go to Real Action Wrestling. Now, what did you think about that, Scott leaving somebody that's been there since the beginning?
I thought it was a great opportunity for him. I'd only been on a few shows with him, but he seemed like a really nice guy. He seemed like it was about time that he was going to get an opportunity to wrestle. Scott Savage is kind of a trendsetter in the Maritimes. He was really the first. You think about it, he was the first guy under 200 pounds to come along and actually wrestle in the Maritimes. Before that, unless you're 220, 230, you wouldn't even get looked at by Emil. And Scott Savage is kind of like the first to come along and actually get bookings from promoters.
I just thought of another story involving that.
And then, oh wait, I'm not done yet.
No, this is good. Don't let me forget it.
Okay. And then, so he left for Real Action and Lincoln Steen rode his coattails.
Oh.
No.
Whoa, stop the bus. Okay, first off, I just want to point out something that I was going to mention earlier, but now I'm going to punch you in the bag. Scott wasn't really the first. When the year that Scott started wrestling for Emil was the year that Emil partnered up with Mike Zink for the Big Disaster. And Mike Zink was the one who, essentially, Mike Zink was the one who essentially brought in Vance Nevada and Mental for the tour. And Emil seen these guys and put them on second match, which has been known in the old school. Your second match is always your worst match on the card. First match gets the show going. You have to go to good, solid first match. The second match is your throwaway match. third match before intermission in the meals cards was always, something that'll make you go to intermission and then want you to come back after intermission. And then you have your 2 matches after that. But your second match, and as soon as Vance seen that, he's like, oh, great. He doesn't think much of us. And then the first night, they were second match. The rest of the night, they were semi-main or the opener. But I never rode Scott Savage's coattails in real action wrestling. Unlike how Tony thought.
Coattails.
Tony, we're gonna stay on that topic a little bit. In June 2002, Lincoln Steen left mainstream wrestling to go to real action wrestling. That was the 2 by far top guys in mainstream wrestling.
I thought it was fucked.
What were you thinking? Is there a reason why these guys are leaving?
No, it was just, I'm sorry enough to realize it didn't matter with money. Really.
At the time.
At the time, I'm like, wow, they're drawing pretty good crowds in a lot of places. A good place to get some experience. I realized, and I grown up watching the Grand Prix, watching real action in its early years. And
in fact, if you catch the first real action wrestling TV taping, you can see a young Tony Armstrong sitting front row, losing his mind. I believe you can pick up those videos on newscott.com. That's www.newscott.com.
So, yeah.
I just wanted to point out that when Scott and I first started working with real action wrestling.
Well, Scott started first.
Well, yes, but it's you're a jackass.
Who started first?
Scott did start first.
And then
but when we started, when Scott started, and then I started.
You showed up like, I know Scott. Can
I get booked?
Can I get booked?
I can. Do the girls wrestle? No, but during that whole thing, we never really left mainstream wrestling.
No.
Devin really had nothing booked. There was one show that Devin had booked the entire time I was working with Real Action Wrestling, and I did not make that show. Not because I was working with Real Action Wrestling at the time, but it was in the same night as my brother's graduation.
I think the Office of Mainstream kind of made it a little more personal than it really had. He took it as a direct hit.
But at no point was it ever that. There's 2 different echelons of wrestling. There's 2 different levels of wrestling.
You couldn't say echelon.
No, I couldn't. You can't even say it either. But there was 2 at that point. There was 2 distinct levels of wrestling in the Maritimes. There was Real Action Wrestling, which was at the time by far probably one of the most talented rosters in North America, notwithstanding the WWE. So I mean, like, do I want to go? And no offense to you now, but at the time I was like, okay, do I stay around here wrestling Outcast, wrestling Tony Armstrong, Too Fit Tony Armstrong? Do I sit around, wrestling Firefly, or do I go up and get a chance to get in the ring with Bobby Roode or Eddie Watts or Chi-Chi Cruz or the Wild Men? Gowie Mike Hughes, Yeah, exactly. The scales kind of tipped in the Real Action Wrestling favor at the time. And essentially, Devin really didn't have anything booked during that entire time. So it was like, well, I can make X amount of dollars a week here, or X amount of, or half an X amount of cents here once a month. So where do you think I was going to go? It was a business decision. It was never anything personal. And to set this record straight, during the time where we were gone from mainstream, I still wrestled while Real Action Wrestling was touring for Devin.
The funny thing is that
I'm king of the fair.
That's a story on itself. But really, if I sat down and thought about it, June, there's one show really where neither of you were on there. Scott was still at the building because they were off for the week. That was the week they had off.
Oh, that was too. And
Vance come down to work, and that's why he got heat with the Office.
Oh, yes. Now it's all making sense. Yeah. But I did, it was the same week as my
Scott was booked up till, I think Scott was booked up until bell time. Then he was like, can't do it.
Yeah,
understandably so.
Yeah.
But That was the first month those fucking guys from the States were up, weren't? No. Yeah.
No.
No.
They came up the show that I told Devin I was going to go be working with Real Action Wrestling, and then he wouldn't be able to use me until the Real Action Wrestling tour was over.
Now, after Real Action Wrestling ended, July 2002, died 2002.
You followed Scott Savage's coattails back to mainstream wrestling. How did this make you feel?
No, actually, in this case, Scott would have rode my coattails back to mainstream. Jackass. I came back first.
There was another promotion
Special talent?
running at the time, All Canadian Pro Wrestling, Atlantic Coast Wrestling, changed the name a couple of
Is there an
times.
Atlantic Coast Wrestling show that might be available on newscott.com that involves the Cowboy Mike Hughes slapping Tony Armstrong in the face?
There might just be.
Check out newscott.com and pick up that video.
Now, once you realized Atlantic Coast Wrestling had shut down just a few days later, again, was there any time that you thought that wrestling was going away here in the Maritimes? You had the two top promotions running, and they both closed up shop within
Within
2 or
like a
3 day
week and a
period.
2 weeks.
And actually, I think America was the breaking point for ACW, if I'm not mistaken.
I wasn't familiar because ACW essentially never hit Nova Scotia. They had a few shows in Halifax, but for the most part, they really weren't, where Real Action Wrestling was touring, they weren't touring. Where Real Action Wrestling wasn't touring, they were. Like, they did a lot of shows up in New Brunswick and around New Brunswick towns.
Even in northern Quebec.
Yeah, exactly. Southern Quebec.
Yeah, sorry.
Northern New Brunswick, southern Quebec. No, but at no point did I really think wrestling's dead. I knew that the days of being able to go on the road for 2 months at a time in the Maritimes might have seen its last day. But wrestling wasn't dead because we were still when we did the tour after the Real Action tours of mainstream. We still drew, with the exception of 2 nights, decent-sized crowds. So, the crowds were still there, the fan support was still there. It was just a matter that business practices that were used with Real Action, and I assume with ACW as they folded as well, were the breaking points of those companies.
When Real Action Wrestling stopped running, or died, in July 2002, a lot of the guys didn't get paid up until...
No, not a lot of the guys. All of the guys did not get paid.
Did that discourage you at all?
No, I've been working for mainstream up to this point. I was used to, there not being enough money to fully cover what it costs to do things, and I just took that as this is a lesson learned. Never accept checks for payments again. The whole issue wasn't that they didn't get paid. It was the fact that they got stiffed on their pay. It's like, here's your check. Thanks, guys. See you later. Everybody goes and cashes their checks, starts spending a little bit of money, and all of a sudden, those checks all bounced. Yeah, so now we're owed this money we had spent that we never had to spend.
Plus NSF charges.
And charges for the checks bouncing and such. It just, that... At no point I only bounced one check. I never received my final check for Real Action Wrestling.
Was there any problems when you decided to return to mainstream wrestling in August 2002?
Not at all. Like I had said, if there was hard feelings and personally be hurt, it wasn't apparent when I came back. It was pretty much welcomed with open arms. My pay didn't go up at all, but it didn't go down. And my spot on the card seemed to still be there, but essentially it's like, well, why wouldn't you want to take guys that have been touring all summer long for the rival company and use their names and likenesses on posters when you go back to the other towns? So, I had no ill feelings towards the office, and I don't think they had any towards us coming back.
Tony, when Scott and Steen came back to mainstream wrestling for the tour in August, what did you think of them returning? Do you think it was taking a spot away from you on the card that you were working for?
No, it was a great opportunity. At that point, Jerry Martell changed residence and moved to the Maritimes. He's over in Halifax, and I thought it was a great time to learn from all three of them. I felt that it was at that point it had been the strongest that the mainstream roster had been. A few boys from Maine were making regular trips up, and a couple of them were really good. The other guys they tended to bring up were the drizzling shits, but the Legion Cage and Sonny Roselli were
Legion Cage.
very good.
When Real Action Wrestling died, the only person at the time to come over to the mainstream wrestling roster was Sweet Sarah. Your thoughts on Sarah, either one of you, and why you, with all the roster of guys that were still here at the time, why was she the only one that decided to wrestle for mainstream?
Well, you started them off from
Sarah's tremendous talent. Where she's traveled has proven that. I think it was for her. It was just a matter. It was a place to work. I really don't know what her reasons were for working for mainstream. Other than that, she come across as a consummate professional, and you could always tell she was willing to learn. She was constantly in the ring, just either trying stuff or if there's someone more experienced in there, and they're learning from them.
Sarah did go. The misassumption there is that she stayed in the Maritimes. Sarah actually did go home with all the guys from Winnipeg, and then flew back down to do this tour with Devin. And I think the main reason that she did it is because she left Winnipeg to get away from Winnipeg, and then realized when she had to go back that it was, she didn't want to be there, so she wanted to get back out of the Maritimes. Because she came down essentially living at my house, my parents' house, and she got a job, like a shoot job down at the Irving, big stop. I actually still have the her name tag in my room. She left it for me, and I just never cleaned my room, right? So it's just still sitting there. And Sarah was great to have around. I mean, at the time she was still very green, really willing, really willing to learn, and she was a little bit crazy too, because I mean I can remember time she wanted try and take a superplex during a training session before a show, and we're all looking at her like, are you retarded? I was like, that's not something you try out before the show, it's something you do at the show. It's a pretty big bump to be doing for free, which essentially we all did that summer. But it was great having Sarah around, and I still haven't figured out how.
You made your parents think you weren't gay for a little
while. Well, that was true too. It kind of helped with that front, jackass. But it was weird. I had this, hot chick living with me at my parents' house for a month and a half, and not once did I try anything. What was wrong with me?
So it does prove that he wasn't being a faggot.
Yeah, what was weird, man. She had me wrapped around her little finger. Steen, make some donuts. So Steen would make some donuts. Steen.
And then Steen would eat all the donuts.
And then Steen would eat the donuts. Steen, can you give me a back rub? Alright. Wait a second. Yeah, wasn't a good scene. Fun though, fun times.
The second part of the question.
That was a two-part?
That was a two-part.
Oh.
Why was she the only one that you think decided to wrestle?
Because everyone else.
Because nobody else could afford to. She probably lost the least amount of money, either as because she didn't have anybody she was sending checks home to. She has no children that she has to worry about that we know of. At that time, everybody else had been down there, with the exception of Vance Nevada, since June. Well, since before June, since May.
And April.
And April, no, we came back, it'd be just May. They've been there since May, and I think they're just sick of being down here getting fucked for money. And why would they come back? I mean, they already proved themselves that Maritimes wasn't able to support them financially. What reason would you come back?
For a week.
For a week-long tour.
As 2002 ended, Tony Candela ran another death tour, 2003. Was there any interest to bring you back out to there?
I talked to Tony a few times via the telephone. But my problem with that was I called too late. He was going on tour. I called him the middle of January. He was going on tour sometime in February, and he had already had his entire roster booked for that tour. Which was a shame, but I said, he's told me straight up, he's like, if I have any cancellations, you're going to be the first guy I called. He pretty much apologized to me for, not having anything for me. And I still keep in contact with Candelo on a semi-regular basis. I actually haven't talked to him about a year, so I'm probably going to go home tonight and give him a call and just, say hello. Actually, not tonight, because he'll probably be busy with the AWE tapings.
Is that tonight?
Yep, that's tonight. Tonight being actually October 8th, 2005.
The date. Now, when 2003 started, that's when you, Tony, started to improve a lot in the ring, spending more time in it with Lincoln Steen. Your thoughts on when Devin came to you and pretty much told you that you're going to be put on top of the card?
Well, first I'm going to credit Lincoln Steen with teaching me that, 400-pounders don't bump around the ring like a maniac. It also explained why I blew up so quickly, other than my horrendous conditioning at the time. And he taught me exactly why I did things and at my size, why they meant things. And I don't know, Devin told me he was going to put me on top of the card. I was like, awesome. You know what I mean? Pay was the same, which was next to nothing. It just meant that he expected me to do more of my matches, which was a good thing. It gave me more opportunities to open up and to do stuff. It gave me more opportunities to work at the time. Steen, Scott had gone back out west to escape Steen riding his coattails. But it was a really good experience. Devin had started that weekly venue at Doolittle's and it was looking pretty good at the time. First few crowds were kind of...
Wasn't it bi-weekly to start?
It was bi-weekly for like the first 2 months, month and a half. And then he got that fucking death trap and the ring fixed up.
Ah, that's what it was then. I miss the wood stove.
Now, April 24th, 2003. It's a pretty special night in different ways for both of you. Tony, I'll start with you first. It was the night you won Mainstream Wrestling's 20-man over-the-top rope Royal Rumble match to become, at the time, your first reign as Mainstream Wrestling champion.
Yes,
What do you think about that?
First, I think this is a little segue into that. That was a nice Scott Savage return from out west, and I don't think a whole lot of people outside of the locker room knew this. Nobody outside of Devin Chittick and Sarah Stock, who debuted with the company again that night, knew that he was coming. Not just until he got to the building, I mean until we were in the ring during the Battle Royal and they played his music. And I think you were the only person in the ring at the time.
Yeah, I had thrown out the...
Cypress and somebody. Scotia Soul.
Somebody.
Just
and I was sitting in the ring, had my beer in the hand, sitting in the chair. Fucking Beastie Boys starts playing. I look around, I think, what the fuck? I look at New Scott, it's even captured on New Scott Video, which you can purchase by going to www.newscott.com. Where's my fucking shirt?
You gave it away.
Anyways, sitting in the ring, I'm drinking a beer. I'm waiting for the next opponent to come out in the Royal Rumble. Or whatever, probably Royal Rumble is what Devin called it, because he's that original. And I look at New Scott, I say, he's not here. And out he comes from the portal in the office behind Dave Doolittle's kitchen. Comes Scott Savage, in real gear. He steps to the ropes, and I'm furious. For one, I hadn't talked to the guy since he left back in the fall. never called me. Never sent me an email, even though I emailed him. And here comes out the thing, and he's got this smile on his face. And I proceeded to beat the living shit out of him.
He blew you up because he keep taking shit and you just get it back up.
Yeah. Blew me up as in pissed me off. I gave him a clothesline. Actually, I gave him a clothesline, and that was the one thing he's
Hey,
like,
it finally makes sense why you were so pissed off. He took off to out west and you had all these coattails to ride all
That's
the
exactly
way.
it.
And that was it. It's like, damn you.
Why don't you go sit in the front of the next mainstream show or something? Cheer for Mike Hughes.
Maybe I will.
Slap you in the face.
Maybe you should stop making so many coattails.
Maybe you should stop sitting in the front row getting slapped by wrestlers.
Maybe you should stop riding coattails.
Maybe you should stop sitting in the front row getting slapped by the wrestlers.
I don't.
Anymore.
As 2003 proceeded, Devin brought in Canadian legend, at the time 18-year veteran Chi Cruz, to wrestle Tony on about 9 different occasions.
That was 9 or 10.
9 or 10 different occasions. Steen, your thoughts on only getting to work Cheech only one night of that tour? You thought you'd get? Did you think you'd be able to wrestle him more than once, or were you happy that Tony was getting the opportunity?
You know what? Tony learned a lot from Cheech, because Cheech is one of these guys that can take a talent like Tony, bare minimum, not very much talent, actually pretty shitty, if you want to know the honest to God truth, and make them a credible talent. And that's something that Tony needed, because he was god-awful. He's still god-awful, but, not as bad as he once was.
But now I got a cool finisher, everybody pops for it.
Yeah, because you're a mark. No, but it was good on Tony to work with Cheech. I mean, honestly, at this point, I was more nervous having my match with Cheech than I'd ever been getting in the ring before. Why, I have no idea, because it should have been an easy night for me. But for some reason with Cheech, here's a guy that when I was, wanting to be a wrestler, here's a guy that I seen, I was like, man, Chi Cruz. Grand Prix Wrestling. From East LA. Here's a guy that, it was one of the reasons I got into the business. So here I am standing across the ring from Chi Cruz, and we have our match, and it turns into a tag match with me and the Wild Man taking on him and Scott Savage, and then one of my co-workers who was at the shows in my hometown in Enfield at the tavern,
Another stellar draw for Lincoln Steen.
Why don't you lick my nuts?
Why don't you go to Curly's and see if they take people there? It's like getting shots right there and you on top.
Anyways.
What floor is hardcore?
I hate your guts. So, we're into the tag match, and Scott and Cheech get bumped into the ring, and they're up there complaining, and one of my co-workers, Jan from Poland, is sitting up there. They're all liquored because all my boys from work were there. And my boss goes, you get to make sure you go show over there and show them, help Mater out, help Steen out. So basically, Jan comes around the corner, grabs hold of Cheech, throws him in against the ring, and is trying to throw him back in the ring. And Cheech turns around for a second, he's kind of messing with him, and all of a sudden, Jan is not letting go of Cheech. So Cheech just starts the beat. He's pounding on him, gets him down there. Scott Savage is kicking him in the ass. Like kicking his ass. But honest to God, he's behind him, booting the guy in the ass. And Cheech is just railing this guy, and all of a sudden, Cheech just got him, and he looks at him, he's got his head, he just looks at him, and he punches him right in the face. And it was awesome. Great clip on newscott.com.
And there's the big clear. This is the best. You watch the tape, and you see the whole clearing because the locker room cleared. There's about the bouncers were over there, and all you hear is one of Steen's coworkers screaming over and over again. See you at the pool party, bitch.
No, okay, first of all, if you're gonna get the line right, my friend Chris White, who was very out of it, was one of the first people to go over and break it up because the bouncers were stupid that night. They're like, there's a fight, I thought it was wrestling tonight. So Chris comes over and he's breaking it up, and Frank Parker's there lipping off, and there's word exchange, and Chris White, being probably one of my favorite people on the planet, looks at Cheech and goes, see you at the pool party, you fucking faggot. because it was in Enfield. My brother figures it's weird as Enfield. All the boys end up back at my place for a few beer in the backyard beside the pool, which never happened because my coworker decided to fight Gigi Cruz and lose.
It was pretty even up until Cheech realized it was a fun day.
Yeah.
Tony, your thoughts on working with Chi Cruz, a guy you watched wrestle for many years?
Well, when I was growing up and watching Grand Prix and that indie-wise,
All right. My arm is dead now. I'll be like Zach down. One arm and the rest. I can't really put that shit on TV.
Growing up, there was 3 guys. Cheech, Joe Legend, and then Mike Hughes. I watched, and it's like guys I wanted to emulate.
Didn't Mike Hughes once slap you?
You already mentioned that.
I know, but I had mentioned it again.
3 guys I wanted to emulate. We get a chance to climb the ring with Chi Cruz, was a great experience. I learned probably more in the 9-10 matches I had with him than anything I was ever going to learn from this fucking douchebag.
I am a douche.
It was a really good experience. Cheech thought that wrestling was more about reacting to what the crowd said, and it wasn't all about just calling everything out back and just trying to put your match together out back so you remember step by step. You have to be willing to react to what's going on in the ring. I really think that was about the point that I started to develop a lot better as a worker. And Steen's taking all the decent lighting away with his big fucking ass hanging in the window.
I'm just looking at the fucking beautiful view of Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
Since it's already been brought up a few times by Lincoln Steen, who I can't see because of the light in the background.
Oh, sorry, buddy.
In May 2002, you went to a ACW show, sit in front row. Tony's credit, there was only 1 row of chairs.
Okay.
Mike Hughes.
Mike Hughes. I went to the ACW show. I sat in the crowd. Mike Hughes come out. He had seen me. I believe he had seen me at this point because I had attended a couple of sessions with the Sinners before I went with Mainstream. Again, matter of economics. I could train with them. And Mike Hughes noticed me. I'm not sure how much he knew about Mainstream at the time, but I'm figuring because he knew I was either training or working. And he realized I'm just sitting there in the crowd. He hauled up and gave me a slap. And for a while, I was like, "Fuck, would he just haul back and slap me for it?" And then I'm talking to Steen about it one time. And Steen's like, "Well, maybe you knew that you're trying to get, since you're getting into the business, that the best thing for you to do wouldn't be to sit in the front fucking row of a show." At which point, Steen slapped me in the back of the head and called me a moron. So it was pretty straightforward.
Truth be told, you are a moron.
Right, getting later
I have an
into
IQ of 14. Later in life, they will tell me that I'm retarded.
getting later
I
in,
love Lamp.
into 2003.
Lamp. Carpet.
A lot of the mainstream wrestling roster started at the leaving. Cinder, Vinny Glide, Sarah Stock, Scott Phoenix. Chi Cruz had gone home. Flex Falcone, guy from Newfoundland, Seaman White.
Oh fuck! That was like gaining a person, him leaving.
What was going on at that time? Why was so many people leaving?
Just the year winding down and people going back to what they had to do. Cinder went home for the summer and eventually come back, wrestled and worked a few shows and decided it wasn't what he wanted to do with Mainstream. Vinny Glide left school, moved back to Pictou County where he's got his job hosting the CKC radio station, doing on-air stuff. Scott Phoenix got married to a dude.
Sorry.
Flex Falcone had a falling out with the office and left.
You're falling out with the office.
Who else was there?
Fuck
Sarah left because she got a couple bookings in some little known place down south, Mexico. I don't know. Some people may have heard of it before. But really, everybody left for their own reasons. Not all of them were related to the office. So don't think it was just the office that caused this mass walkout. It's just a matter of people moving on, and at the time it was really just a lot of these people were leaving. It was just the one show that they're running a week, and that's not enough for people that are out here just trying to live off what they're making wrestling to survive.
2003 ended with you losing the mainstream
I
title.
can't believe you didn't bring up the fucking Maritime Cup on your own fucking DVD shoot. Fuck. You think
Okay,
you'd be
well.
all over that fucking shit. Maritime Cup, the first one, is available at newscup.com. You still doing the thing where you get all the bonus matches gimmick?
No.
Oh, wow, you're a cheap prick, aren't you?
Oh, fine. We'll go back to the Maritime Cup. Happened a week after Hurricane
Where
Juan.
did Steen go?
He's in the bathroom. Yeah, I heard him lock the door.
Steen! What are you doing?
We go back to the Maritime Cup. It was a show ran by myself and Sonny Roselli. It was basically that you got me in touch with Sonny about this show. Your thoughts on this?
Traveled to Maine too, so that was pretty much the opening point. We were just sitting. Remember, we went down to Holton, did a few shows just across the border, and I hope this never falls in the hands of customs or fog. Went down across the border. We wrestled a few shows, and we were just sitting around talking about what was going on up here. And after the idea, I thought I just watched the 2002 Super 8, the one that Bobby Roode was in, done by ECWA, and I was like, well, something like that I think would go over really well in the Maritimes. And I brought it up to you, and you had mentioned, yeah, and we talked about it, and we crunched some numbers about it, because we were down there 2 days after we were sitting around the second day, we started crunching some numbers and thinking about it. Realized it was possible, and then Sonny heard about it, and he was all over the fucking thing. Really, for a show that you guys put so much into, it come together really, really quickly for a little more than 5 weeks, especially since a week of that, the whole province was shut down. And I think a lot of work had put into that show, more than any other show I'd seen up until that point. And I think that outside of the very, very shitty fucking timing of the show, which was on a Thanksgiving Sunday, to be 2 years ago, or 2 years tomorrow, that it would have drawn really well. A lot better than it did. It did draw well. But the roster up until that point, it had been probably the best roster we'd seen in the Maritimes in 18 months almost. Well, about 18 months since Real Action shut down. Got a chance to work Gary Williams on the show. That was phenomenal. Gary was really easygoing. I mean, like, for a person I had experience at that point, but nothing near what anybody that he'd probably be willing to, or anything that he had been working with, because he was out west working with Can-Am, working with Steve Rivers and Massive and that. And probably for him to come across the country to work some guy with very limited experience, it was probably probably not that up for it. But he took me aside, we talked, and he was more than willing to take my input, and that we went out. I thought we had a really good match. It was short, but for where it was on the card, it served its purpose. Up until that point, it was probably one of my better matches, and I think it comes across really good as a match for tape to send around, because it showcased everything I learned really up until that point.
Tony and I were just discussing the first Maritime Cup, his thoughts on that, and now, so your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it was a good show. Good show. Awesome show. Good show. A lot of fun. Thanksgiving weekend. It was 2 years ago, actually. 2 years ago to the day, almost.
2 years ago on the 12th.
Okay, you make me
Close,
look like a
though.
jackass. The people out there don't know it's 12th.
Well, you said earlier it was the 8th.
I will fight you. No, it was a great show. It was the last time, the first time for a while that the Maritimes had seen in such an elite roster like myself. and Tony Armstrong, and Gary Williams, and Mike Hughes, and Scott Savage, and of course, Bobby Roode, who eventually won the cup. So I mean, there's a great roster. There's a few parts of it that, you know, well, just like any show, have their problems, but, you know, overall, fantastic time, fantastic event.
Thoughts on getting to work Bobby Roode?
Bob was a guy that I've always, you know, thought a lot of as a talent, and I think he's, you know, he's awesome. Bobby Roode is probably one of the top talents out there right now.
So Lincoln Steen,
So
this is what I want you to answer me. If you watched the Maritime Cup and you watched their match, it was a really good match. He likes Steen's taking some shots from
What the
Bobby
hell
in
is
the corner. It broke. Remember that pub crawl? I dropped it on the cobblestones down on the waterfront. Broke the phone.
It doesn't even look like it's broken.
Anyways, back to the
Like-
case. Asshole, listen.
I am listening.
Lincoln Steen gets a shirt ripped off and Bobby throws it out of the ring. So, consummate professional he is. What does Lincoln Steen do?
Jumps out of the ring, goes, puts my shirt back
Lincoln Steen
on.
jumps out of the ring, runs over, and hauls that shirt back down over his big puffy nipples and huge gut. Lincoln Steen, why'd you do that?
Because it got good heat.
No.
And it's embarrassing because my body is disgusting at that point.
He was pretty fucking out of shape.
Ending out 2003, you two had a series of matches with each other, which kind of started kind of oddly and ended kind of oddly. So it started with a fans bring the weapons match and ended with a regular wrestling match. It's just kind of backwards from the way things are normally done, but hey. Your thoughts on working with each other and how the matches went?
He's a stiff prick, that's for fucking sure.
Do you know how hard it is to carry 300 pounds for a wrestling
It was
match?
425 at the time.
Holy fuck. Do you know how hard it is to carry 425 pounds for a wrestling match?
Why was
You
the
know how
feud
hard it is to
started
make
with
some-
a fans bring the weapons match?
Say that again, I didn't quite pick it up.
Why was your
You don't have to talk slowly for me, I'm not stupid.
Why was it started with a fans bring the weapons match right out of the gate?
Maybe turn the volume
Does it work? Because he still looks like a dick.
on.
You know what? That you'll have to ask the booker at the time. He essentially brought the idea to me, and I said, "Yeah, if we're gonna do it. Let's do it. Fans bring the weapons. Or just let have a hardcore match. You know, let's get involved in the crowd and really draw them into it." And at the time, the gates were dropping essentially.
Well, remember, we thought that was going to be the last show for the year, too.
Yeah. We thought that might be the last show ever. Doolittle shows have been dropping substantially.
Since
Pretty much
the
since
cop, really.
Yeah, like the shows, honest to God. Well, even before the cup, shows, the shows were just.
End of August started to drop
Yeah.
off. We had a good crowd for the end of September.
Yeah, it's just things weren't going good.
Just kind of burnt out.
Burnt out the venue, broke the talent. The guys that were working the shows, for the most case, some of them weren't ready to be, in front of a crowd. Some of them weren't ready to ever, and still to this day aren't ready to be in a ring. Jackass, offside. No, last time you reached over, it hurt. But yeah, we basically did the fans bring the weapons street fight as a way to try to draw some, interest back in the mainstream wrestling and Dave Doolittle's. And honestly, I think it worked. We drew a huge crowd for that.
We drew pretty good crowds to the end of the year.
And we drew pretty good crowds until we took our break at Christmas time.
The very last show at Doolittle's 2003, Devin announced that he was bringing in former WWE superstar, the Honky Tonk
The
Man.
greatest intercontinental champion of all time.
What did you think when you heard that?
I didn't think he did that.
I didn't think Devin. I don't know where Devin was getting the money to afford to bring in the Honky Tonk Man. God love him. I mean, he was drawing, at $5 or $8 a head at this bar, maybe 40 to 75 people a night, depending on the week. So, and I know what I was making, and I have a good idea what the rest of the boys should have been making. And I honestly, God, the way my math worked out, I was like, how can you afford this?
There's a little offside. This is one of the things I actually thought that Jake was really brilliant at doing. He had these things, he had these super shows he ran at the end of the month. And for some reason, it was just the same fucking roster. And for some reason, he managed to get pop these huge crowds for these end of the month shows. And it was, there were some nights it was pretty much a walking up sellout. There's the night they did that bikini contest. The first, and me and Cheech, and the first time they did me and Cheech, the last man standing match me and Scott Phoenix had, and the match with Flex Falcone, and I don't remember anything where you were on top that ever drew well. Maybe it was that time at Curly's. No, fuck, you didn't even draw in your hometown.
I know.
But in all seriousness, there's really outside,
I think a lot of that though
it wasn't really anything, you know what I mean? For the most part, it was the exact same roster.
I think it was mostly the fact that during the regular shows and not the pay-per-view type show, because I think that was the mentality he had. This was like the big show thing. It was the fact that he didn't do any work he worked once a month for one show, and the rest of the time was just, okay, what do we do tonight? And the thing was, he was only drawing good hoses
Really good
once a month, and the rest of the time it was hit or miss. And when I say hit or miss, I mean I hit with 20 people, or a miss with 20 people, and a hit with 25. I don't think it was planned that we draw great. I think it just kind of worked out that once a month when the matches, the big match was put on, the marquee sign in front of Doolittle's were the shows that drew. Otherwise, it was wrestling at Doolittle's on Thursday night, karaoke Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Starting out 2004, the Honky Tonk Man was here. There was pretty good crowds, advanced ticket sales for all his shows. And then the sky pretty much fell, and we had like 4 feet of snow in one day. Your thoughts on what happened after the New Glasgow show?
You know what? That was probably the best roster that Devin could have had for that money that he was spending. We went to New Glasgow the first night. The snow fell from the sky. What it seemed like in one big. Boom.
I remember the drive back.
The drive back.
We left New Glasgow. It was just flurrying pretty much. It was just starting to snow. We hit the connector to Churro. We start driving. It was just bam, fucking snow shitstorm all over the fucking place.
My car was in the bank.
I think it took
feet of snow.
2.5 hours to drive from Churro to Enfield. Just normally like what, a 35, 40 minute drive.
All the way 20 minutes away I go. I am flying. Yeah, but that tour, it could never be blamed on Devin, because the good Lord said, no. Nobody wrestles in the Maritimes in February. I'm going to put an end to this right now.
It's
It was actually kind of funny because the first night of the Honky Tonk tour, the main event was myself and Tony. I want to say something, but the camera's rolling. All right. Yeah, it was funny. The first night of the Honky Tonk Man tour that never was, saw me and Tony pitted against Honky Tonk Man and Vinny Glide. And this is when Tony first started really training, losing weight, and he felt like $1 million because he dropped probably, what, 20, 35 pounds by that point?
20 pounds, 2 ounces.
So he's feeling fantastic. So he forgot that, if you take 25 away from 400, it's still a shitload of weight. But he could have sworn he was a 220-pound cruiserweight. By the way, he was flying around that ring and blowing himself up.
Do you remember the big hot comeback that Mike
never was?
Yeah, I'm feeding for all these bumps, taking these bumps off, fucking punches, blowing myself off. Steve's taking these punches and going to a knee and so back in the corner.
Do you think things would have been differently with mainstream wrestling if the tour had drawn as well as expected, as well as going to without the snowstorm?
Not essentially. You know, the next night after the first night was Doolittle's, which would have been a big show. The night after that would have been Sheet Harbor, which I knew was going to be 80 people max.
Which we ended up running.
You know, the town is a great little town, but at this point in you know, the 21st century, there's no money in that town. It's a shame it's a dying town. There's no money in that town. I don't even remember where the Sunday booking was.
Oh, there was another booking. Was it in Eastern Passage?
That was Saturday.
No,
That was
wasn't a
Saturday.
Sunday booking.
There was. I don't know. It was Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Yeah.
There was no Sunday booking. But Doolittle's was a walk-up sellout. 250 tickets all day, Doolittle's. I think it would have helped in the short term. I don't think it really would have helped long term.
No.
Shortly after Devin brought in the Honky Tonk Man, you mentioned Devin had very little money, and he didn't have very much money after the Honky Tonk Man left because things didn't go as planned. He announced he was bringing in former WWE superstar Gangrel. Your thoughts on that?
Gangrel was, you know, he was a great guy to have around. Basically, the entire time he was here, he was having matches with me, Marco Estrada, Paco, and I think he wrestled Outcast once in Sheet Harbor, I think it was. And he came in, and we got along really well. He had a lot of stories being known as Medium Buddy for my big buddy, Kingman. The tour itself, on the other hand, it was lacking in a lot of places. You know, Tony was only wrestled maybe 2 shows. The rest of the time was basically a roster of myself, Gangrel, Devin. Devin is Firefly. Oh my God! Did I just let the cat out of the bag? Devin's Firefly.
Oh, fuck.
That Firefly came all the way from Japan. All these years. But no, you look at the guys he had in the matches in the undercard. He had CM Power at the time, shouldn't have been even near a ring, and should have been taken aside. Thanks, guys. No, don't worry about it. I don't mind being interrupted. Fucking science. He had the CM Power wrestling Nicholas Santone, who I'm entirely positive had never stepped into the ring, let alone been shown how to properly wrestle. It was awful. And that entire tour, I sat down and I started thinking, and I realized, oh my God, this is depressing as all fuck. I had to work twice as hard each one of those shows to make a real difference in the show, to make it worth the $10, $12 sometimes people were paying to get into the cards.
Now, neither of you were working with Devin full time at this point. Was that a decision on his part, or a decision on your part, or mutual?
He pretty much came to the decision that 1 week Tony works, the next week Steen works. 1 week Tony works, the next week Steen works. And you know, I'm all for it because I think, well, you know, you can't afford to bring me in, you know, 4 times a month, and you can only use me twice a month. You know, you can't. Is that what you can afford? That's what you can afford. But you know, that to me also signals something. Well, if Devin doesn't have the money to afford me on more than for all of his shows and only afford me for certain dates, and he's replacing me with guys who he can afford because either A, they're cheap as balls, or B, they don't charge any money whatsoever for their services, then does that really be, do I really want to be the guy who, you know, continues to work for him? Because if I keep doing that, eventually it's going to get to a point where he's not making any money and he can only afford me maybe once a year.
Tony?
It doesn't matter if, well, it's takes money to get in shape. I'm not sure if well, Steen definitely would fucking know. Look at him. Yes, Steen.
I hate your guts. Just
Yeah,
keep
of
going.
It's a matter of I was burnt out. You know what I mean? It's only so many times you can show up to a venue and there'd be nobody there. You sit down, you think about it. It's like, wow, I've been wrestling 2 years, and I'm like one of the most experienced guys here now. And it's like I'm not.
And it's not that you're experienced because, hey, I've been all over. It's
Yeah,
because you're the only one left.
And everyone else in that I was like, well, I can pretty much take the summer off, dedicate myself to getting in better shape, and just enjoy the summer because doing a lot other than wrestling, and it was just a matter of it wasn't really something I wanted to do anymore at the time because there's really nothing in it for me really. So I made a conscious decision to stop working for Devin.
In May or June 2004, both of you stopped at the time. For one of you temporarily, the other one for good, wrestling for Mainstream Wrestling. Steen, you stopped. You wrestled your last match in May of 2004 for Mainstream Wrestling. Was it hard for you to leave? Since you were there for the start?
It was a very difficult decision for me to make because I knew, for starters, that Devin would take it personally. I was wearing the championship belt at the time, but during the entire Gangrel tour, I had carried it to the ring 3 times. And the rest of the time, I just left it in my bag because I wasn't being announced as the champion. I was going out and working the opener and losing to Marco Estrada by countout. And honestly, I didn't feel that, that was something the champion went out and did. It's something a wrestler would go and do, and I have no problem doing it, but that's something you have your champion do. So I didn't carry the belt. That was my own conscious decision. They didn't announce me as mainstream champion, and I just didn't acknowledge the title. It's not that I was embarrassed by it or anything. It's just that, it doesn't look good in the promotion as a whole to have your champion going out there, losing the first match by countout, and then the rest of the show would be the Drizzle and Shits until the main event again, where, Gangrel was wrestling. And, I was brooding over the point. I didn't know during the time if that's exactly what I wanted to do. I didn't want to do it, and I hoped and I prayed that something was going to change and I'd see some light at the end of the tunnel. And to the last show in Berwick, I didn't see it. I had my match with Marco Estrada in the opener, lost via countout, went to the back, had my shower, got dressed, and then I took my chair and I went down to the Berwick Arena. You can go on the opposite side of the arena and you can go underneath the stands and sit there and you can see the entire ring and see the crowd. And I watched the show. I missed the second match. And I watched the entire show from top to bottom. And that's when I realized, there's nothing I can do now to change the way things are going for this company. Wearing the strap, I started contemplating, who can I drop this to? Who can this go to? And the only real options for dropping it were Tony, who was gone for, whether he'd be back or not was still yet to be decided, and Paco, who during this whole time wasn't used, maybe for 2 or 3 shows, but when I spoke to him, he assured me that he was no longer going to be accepting bookings for Mainstream Wrestling based on the fact that he just couldn't afford to go out and work for Devin. So I didn't want to drop the title to either one of those two for the main reason that, they were planning on leaving and I didn't want them to feel obligated to stick around and help Devin out. They both made the decisions before I did, and, whether they had told Devin or not at that point, the only other options at that point really that were still around that I knew of were Devin himself and CN Power. I hadn't seen Ocast in weeks up to this point. I'd seen Devin and CN Power. And CN Power was at no point was good enough and experienced enough and ready enough to be, here's the title, what can you do with it for Devin? And I knew Devin didn't want to do that either because he told me himself. And I knew he wouldn't put the strap on himself because I knew he would never get in the ring with me. We had worked together in the same company for 4 years. The only time he was ever across the ring from me was in a match where it was him and CM Power in a handicap match versus me. And he basically threw CM Power in there for me to manhandle because at the time the whole gimmick was CM Power was Devin's bitch. And CM Power kept fucking up, and his punishment was to get in the ring with me for a match. It was a handicap match between him and Devin where Devin never stepped in the ring. But I knew Devin would never book himself in a match with me. Why, I'm not sure. I don't know if he was scared I'd beat the shit out of him or, try to hurt him or injure him or something, which, I from wrestling me, I'm not the, I don't go out there trying to hurt people or anything like that. I never have, but I don't, it's not ballet. I like, my matches to be very physical, and then I demand a lot of my opponents, but at the same time, I hit you, I expect you to hit me just as hard or harder back. But, I just had to leave. I couldn't be around it. Financially, it wasn't, I wasn't paying my bills with it. Financially, yeah, I was having a couple extra dollars in my pocket when I go to the bar, but other than that, I wasn't paying any bills off with it. It wasn't supporting me. And at that point, I honestly thought, judging by, the crowds, the talent pool we had at the time, that mainstream wrestling was indeed on its last legs.
The thing I think, and this is something that's made its rounds, there seems to be this popular theory that there's this big fucking mass plan to everybody walk out, and it really wasn't like that. Of course, we all discussed what we thought. The boys talk, especially in a territory like the Maritimes, where the majority of the boys are an extremely tight unit and really close. That we talked about what we thought was going on, and each of us knew that we were thinking about leaving.
It wasn't even so much we were thinking about leaving. We were, most of our conversations, and still to this day we have conversations, how can we make things better? And at that point, we were all lost. At least I was. I didn't think things could get better.
To me, it was a matter of just, there was really, what was there to do? I wasn't going to get anything out of it. Other headaches and a lot of traveling for a lot of nothing. And I could make more money just working 5 minutes from my house. Living close by, I can go work out, I can go do whatever. And why take time out to go wrestle if it's not going to be worth my while? Either most importantly, as selfish as this sounds, money-wise, or even mentally, it'd be different if somebody was in and I was learning from them, but there's nobody around to learn from. So there's literally nothing I was gaining, other than just going out and just doing the same match that I do with CM Power or whoever else was around at the time.
Lincoln Steen never returned to mainstream wrestling. You returned a little under a year later, April 2005, when the Honky Tonk Man was brought back in. What made you go back?
Devin Chittick shot me off an email one night about 4 or 5 weeks outside of the show, asking if I had any interest. They were wrestling and doing a show, and it turned into a semi-regular thing at a nightclub downtown Halifax. Asked me if I was willing to work it. He had mentioned he had Fan Savada coming in, and the Honky Tonk Man was coming in, Sonny Roselli was coming up. And me and Sonny Roselli are extremely close. And I thought, it's local. The number he shot me was pretty good. And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? The Maritime Cup, the second one was coming up. And I hadn't wrestled in probably about 5 months. And that was just a spot show for a small promotion in Newfoundland. And I wanted to just get some ring time and just to try to start getting my timing up to par. So I got booked on that show. Or so I thought. It come to turn out that a week and a half before the show, well, not even a week and a half, it would have been about 5 days before the show. After trying to track down the promoter to see what was going on, I get a call saying that I was unbooked. So naturally I'm upset. I had gone out of my way, not only to take that booking and to move around an exam schedule at school, and also to go out and make sure I wasn't going to get any heat from it from people for the people that won the Maritime Cup, because they had asked me before if I planned on working for anyone else up until that point, and I told them no, and I didn't want to really sit there and lie to them. So I went out and I more or less looked for a blessing for it, just because I didn't want to get heat for somebody for going back on what I said I was going to do. They were fine with it. So to find out I went through all this shit just to get the runaround was kind of a bit of a slap in the face to me. But for whatever reason, I figured there was no personal heat. I just figured that whatever happened, he either figured he wasn't going to be able to budget me out, or he wasn't going to be able to make, for whatever reason, there wasn't a spot for me. So that was fine.
Well, during that same tour, Lincoln Steen, you attended a mainstream show
Drunkenly
in Digby,
It was in the back row, thank you.
Digby, Nova Scotia. One of the guys that you credit your training with had a little problem with the way you left the company at the time with the title. Him being Vance, Nevada. Your thoughts on the conversation you two had?
Vance is a guy who I have a great deal of respect for. And, he helped me out a lot when I was first getting into the business. I've said it, a number of times and nobody can deny it. If it wasn't for Vance, Nevada, introducing Lincoln Steen to Tony Condello and getting Lincoln Steen booked on the Northern Hell Tour, Lincoln Steen would not have gotten over with Eddie Watts. Lincoln Steen would have not gotten booked for Real Action Wrestling. And Lincoln Steen might not be the talented motherfucker you see in front of you today. But Vance, on the other hand, has always had a knack and a stigma going back from very early in his career for kind of getting involved in business that honestly does not concern him. And he openly admitted to me when we had our conversation that he doesn't know why, the exact details behind why I left, but, the thing that angered him most, that I shouldn't say angered him, that disappointed mostly, is that I left without dropping the title. But at the time, he didn't know really what was going on, and whether he still likes me to this day or not, to tell you the truth, if he does, fantastic, I hope to hear from him. If he doesn't, that's how business is, and if, I don't think me leaving the company affected his business at any time, but if it did, I apologize to him, but for the most part, it was a business decision on my part, and something I had to do not only for my pocketbook, but for my mental health as well, and my physical health, to tell you the truth, because I would go out. The thing is leading up to the whole, me leaving mainstream wrestling with the championship belt, I was working with a lot of the mainstream talent at the time, and I would come home back to Wolfville, and I'd be incredibly sore. Just feel awful. I got in the ring with Gangrel during that tour. Gangrel and I essentially beat the living snot out of each other every night. And I didn't feel sore when I woke up. I felt great after the match, felt great in the morning. And I just realized that, I was working so hard for Devin at the time to, hopefully draw bigger crowds and make Devin money, because in turn makes me money, that I had worn myself out. There was nothing left of me. And it was just being very detrimental towards my physical health and my mental health, that I just couldn't be around there anymore. And so those are things that people don't take into account. The old adage is you never leave without, doing business right and dropping the strap. Well, guess what? Hindsight being 20/20, I could have dropped the strap to a garbage can if I had to. Let the garbage can pin me and then put the belt around the garbage can. Okay, there's your new mainstream champion. Because essentially that's what it would have been. It just to the point where it's, did it really matter? No. It bothers me now that people still talk about something that happened over a year ago, but at the same time, Bret Hart got screwed in Montreal in '97, and people still talk about it today, and it's been almost 10 years. But no, me and Vance had our conversation, left matters at that, and I wish him the best. I mean, he's been around for 12 years now, and has over 1,000 matches, and still, still gets the beefy goodness out there.
During the same tour, Vance was the reason why you got booked and unbooked from the Mainstream Wrestling Dome show. Any hard feelings towards Vance for that?
Really, it's just outside of the fact that I really felt it wasn't a matter for him to take care of, or it wasn't his concern. No, matter just as Steen said, it was just him sticking his head in the business. I didn't feel he had anything to concern, and I think at whatever point, by him going after Devin having taken time out to come seek me out and book me, I thought it was pretty dirty fool that he went out of his way to make sure I was unbooked. That being said, I didn't say anything, and I won't say anything because he's the vet. Other than that, no comment. On the plus side of it, I got a chance to work a guy by the name of Jason Holiday, who's got a really good look and seems to have a lot of potential. The kid's phenomenal look. It just looks like he walked off the pages of a muscle magnet. I think it's a good outlook for a lot of people around here in the future. I really think he's got money written all over him.
During the early parts 2005, a group of wrestlers, Duke McIsaac, Gary Williams, Kingman, and Trash Canyon, started to put together the idea of trying to start a television show, Wrestling with Reality. They ran the second Maritime Cup in May 2005, drew over 800 fans.
So why is it that Trash can run in his hometown and draw almost 1,000 people, and you draw in your hometown, you run your hometown and go 4?
Because I never booked or promoted the shows in my hometown. I left it up to somebody who I thought would do a good job of booking and promoting.
Call the fucking ambulance.
Yeah, go ahead. I don't care. Call the ambulance. I don't give a fuck. The whole idea of the show came up with the concept between Kingman and Trash Canyon, and it was impressive numbers at that show. I know there wasn't, for my part, I know I was promoting it through the bar I was working at the time. There's places littered with posters. I had tons and tons of tickets that I was selling from out of the bar. They had advanced tickets all over, not just in Kentville, but they had advanced tickets in Halifax that they were selling. They did a lot of reserved seatings via the internet and stuff like that. So that show didn't just draw Kentville, it drew from all over the Maritimes, because it's the Maritime Cup.
People from as far as St. John.
Exactly. It was the Maritime Cup. It had by far the elite wrestlers from the Maritimes, with the exception of Tony Armstrong, Vinny Glide.
I will give you credit for this. If you watched the second Maritime Cup, and the sound.
I don't put my shirt back on.
No, there was a miscue in the sound when Steen went to come to the ring, and they never stopped playing his music. So he was out there for a good 5 fucking minutes.
The entire run of Dr. Feelgood by Motley Crue.
And I really don't think there was very many people in the business that could keep. And he kept talking to the crowd. By the time the song ended, it was near riotous. It was just something, you know what I mean? It's one of those little things that people do, and it's amazing to watch. That those little things that fucking make the show big. Something like that could have burnt out a crowd a little bit, just him walking around, because really he's not much to look at. Look at him. But he kept them hating him, which I thought was phenomenal.
That show was pretty much the last show that was that successful here this year. Going into the summer of 2005, June, July. There were a couple shows in Trenton that drew a few people. There was a disaster there with a certain
don't
promoter.
forget about Escazone, because Escazone's got a good story.
Go ahead.
Steen,
Tell-
tell me the road trip to Escazone.
I've been known by many people I travel with as on Steen, kind of like the OnStar you can get with most GM vehicles.
Why don't you tell us about how you're also a woman and took an hour just to get out of the house?
It didn't take me an hour to get to the house. It took me an hour to change a starter in a car. It doesn't sound like womanly.
How
work
does
to
it take
me.
you an hour to be like, Daddy, you need to change the starter in my
I
car?
will fight you. Anyways, so I get us to Escazone, but then I switch vehicles. Tony, why don't you explain how you guys got out of Escazone?
Well, I don't know how this happened, but we drove to Escazone and it took us a boat to get back home. I really don't know how that happened. However, yeah, I have no idea. We just drove in the middle of nowhere in the backwoods of fucking Escazone for about the better part of 2 hours. And me and the cameraman here, knew Scott, and suddenly just came across this boat. It looked like the boat out of
Cable
somewhere.
ferry.
It looked
Cable
like
ferry.
the boat out of like Castlevania or something, because it was just like sitting there. We got on it and it just started moving. I didn't know where the fuck we were going. I didn't know there was a cable attached to it until after. I thought we were just going to crash to the other side. No, I got to the other side, opened up, and that was it. And the funny thing is there was a sign saying that it was $5. We get across, we stop, and we're looking around, and it's like, no, we're fucking here. Let's go. Just drive off on it. There's also when Steen tried to sell drugs to a group of teenagers
Okay.
in Glasgow.
All right. I did not try to sell. We leave the mall after playing in the arcade because that's what we do when we go to New Glasgow. Except for me now that I live there.
It
We
is a
play
pretty
at
shitty
the arcade.
now.
Yeah, the arcade is the drizzling shits. We come out of the mall, and these guys look at Tony and me and then there's Scott and Spot Savage. You guys got any weed? And of course I'm like, alright, I don't even look at them. Scott's like scared because he doesn't know what weed is. New Scott's kind of laughing. And Tony's like, yeah, I got some in the back of my car. So anyways, Tony's drinking his little 500 milliliter skim milk. And he gets the keys from New Scott, pops the back of the car, opens it up, reaches in, comes out and gives the guy the middle finger to his face. Get the fuck out of here, I ain't got no shit for you. Guy starts freaking out, so Tony, they get in their car.
Oh, this is the wrestling thing.
Yeah. So Tony throws the milk carton at the back of the car and then screams at him, "Don't cry over spilled milk, assholes!"
Get it? The milk broke the fuck out.
Alright, we're just about done here.
Just cut it off.
Just about done
Where's
here. We're just going to
Rockets?
go over some name association. Let's close it out. Both of you feel free to speak. Cowboy Mike Hughes, Hangman Hughes.
Go ahead, you're the one who gets slapped around by him.
Mike's phenomenal talent. I believe he's in Japan right now. He's doing really well for himself. It's never been nothing but awesome to me. He gave me advice and such. I think like Steen though. We really like Steen.
Mike's probably one of my favorite people to be on the road with. He's great. He's always got a good story. He does crazy stuff. He's fun to be around. That's pretty much it. He's got killer dogs.
Scott Savage.
Coke addict. Loves his coke. Snorts more coke than I think is humanly. And Keith Richards gives him a run for his money in coke.
Like kids want to do drugs these days. They can't. They gotta wait for Scott Savage to die and smoke his ashes.
No, Scott's one of the closest guys I have to a brother in the wrestling business. He's probably the hardest worker and gets the least amount of recognition for the amount of work he does. He's been in the business for 5 years. He was just on the road with Emile Dupre, where not only was he ring crew, but he took money at the door, he ring announced, he refereed, and he wrestled in main events.
Scott was probably the nicest guy. One of the nicest guys, not just in wrestling I've ever met.
I'm sorry, hold on 1 second. Another thing to add on Scott, if you ever leave and not contact me again, I will punish you.
Yeah. He has this tendency to just fall off the fucking planet for 6 months to a year at a time. He keeps to himself, really quiet guy, really nice guy though. He's always willing to go out of his way to help you out, and I think that's great.
Jeff Dupree.
Go ahead, Tony. We're going you, me, then me, you.
He's got that Dupree thing going. That's great. Staying positive.
Good, because I'm not.
Tony's done.
He's
Steen.
like
All right, here's
like 170 pounds.
Jeff Dupree. It seems like a really nice guy overall, but as far as the wrestling aspect of his life is concerned, he has everything that I wish somebody would do for me, and takes it all for granted. His father pretty much promoted a tour at a loss so he could be better prepared to, follow in his baby brother's footsteps into the WWE. He surrounded Jeff with Duke McIsaac, with Waldman and Gary Williams, and most importantly, with Eddie Watts, who's pretty much the equivalent to a human dictionary according to the wrestling business. Now, if I ever had an opportunity like that, I would not sit around in the locker room with headphones on and tear myself away from it. The entire time I would be pretty much annoying the piss out of Watts, asking him questions. I'd spend the rest of the time in the gym training like a demon, because I couldn't let them down. I couldn't let my father down, who just put all this faith and money into me. And that's one thing, that he totally took for granted, and for that, I really have no respect for him as far as wrestling is concerned. I will say he is a nice guy, and he's, friendly and all that kind of stuff, but most human beings are. As far as the wrestling aspect of it, he had so much just given to him on a silver platter, and he pretty much took a shit on it.
Emil Dupree.
He's a legend in what he does. He's probably the only promoter that can say he has never bowed down in the Maritimes. He doesn't stop running because he's losing money. He stops running because he feels like it. He's a millionaire, and nothing we can say can ever deny that. He's had some of the best shows in the Maritimes. He's had some of the best heralded talent come through his ring. He's a success in everything he does.
His roster's a who's who of wrestling, not just in the Maritimes, but across North America. If you name them, in the 80s, they came through the territory at one point or another. The man for 20 years was the person to go to, and he had an iron fist in the territory. Made a absolutely phenomenal amount of money doing so. It's something you have to respect, especially since he came in as competition to another office and built on that. I think that's something pretty phenomenal to take over a territory from somebody else who was running at the time.
Kingman.
Hey, great guy. I think from the stories I've heard, he's a lot calmer now over the years, and I think I'm a bit lucky because of that. Some of the things that I heard a couple of years ago would have got me chewed out a lot worse than I did. He sat down, he discussed, he took the time to point out what I was doing wrong, what I needed to do to improve in that. And anytime I've ever met with him and sat down with him, he's been nothing but the best kind to me. I hear he plays a mean game at checkers, as this like a signal attest to.
Kingman is the checker god. He's the god of checkers. Kingman's a guy who I have nothing but respect for. Here's a guy who's been all over the world wrestling. He doesn't accept anything less than somebody's best. He's the same guy that can put in a conversation, can bury you, make you feel like a piece of shit, but at the same time put you over and make you feel great. And I had many conversations like that with Pete. I think he wants to hate me and he just can't. I think he's gone on record as saying that. But he gives credit where credit is due. He doesn't sugarcoat anything. He doesn't bullshit anybody. He tells it exactly how he's thinking it at the time. And someday I'd like to have that luxury to be able to say something that I want to say when I want to say it, and nobody come up to me and have a problem with it. Because if you look like Pete, nobody ever has a problem with what you're saying.
Jason Holiday.
It's your turn to go first. Is it? From what I've seen of Holiday, he seems to, he's got a great look. Tony said. Looks like he was cut from stone. As far as his work, I can't really comment because I've really never actually watched a Jason Holiday match. I've seen clips and highlights, but you can't really judge somebody's ability in the ring by that. I have noticed that he can be a little bit rough around the edges, but I think that's mostly because he didn't come into the wrestling business the proper way, through the proper channels. He kind of stuck in under the radar, and because of the way he looks, he gets a lot more forgiveness.
I think next year is going to be make or break for him. He's either going to realize that the opportunities he's given, he's being given a lot of opportunities, and he's going to take hold of them, or he's just not. I've had the opportunity to work with him a number of times, and I think he is rough around the edges, but he's willing to learn, he's willing to listen. He needs to slow down a bit and just take things in, and he needs to spend more time just reaffirming what he can do in the business and what he still needs to work on.
And finally, Lincoln Steen, your thoughts on Tony Armstrong?
Fucking douchebag is gonna touch my sister and get his hands cut the fuck off. No, Tony's a guy, is another wrestling brother. Me and Tony have quite the interesting relationship. For anybody who hangs around with him on a regular basis knows that 1 second we can be laughing and joking and making fun of somebody together, and the next minute he can be trying to making me tap out in a shoot finish and trying to separate life from body.
Tony? Steen?
I think he's a fucking douchebag, and I'm going to touch his sister.
And that's it. This interview is over.
Steen's the guy that taught me how to work, really, and I'm always going to be thankful for that. He continues to teach me things about the business, things that I either don't think of or don't realize, and that's always good to have, and somebody to have as a guide. I value his opinion greatly because I know he's not a person that, one, is going to bullshit me, and two, really has any reason to lie to me. He seems like he has an interest in making sure that I'm doing well in the business and making sure that I'm actually not doing stupid things. He'll be the first person to tell me. Other than that,
you ever bump off a chop like that again, I'll fucking kill you.
I'm going to touch the system.
Any final comments from either of you?
Visit newscott.com. That's www.newscott.com. Any final comments? Fans out there in the Maritimes, the people that are going to buy and view this DVD if it ever makes it out of your camera. Because according to the way you work with my Best of Benoit tape, they won't see this DVD for 9 years. But, the Maritimes has the best wrestling fans on the planet. I get emails all the time from a lot of fans, thanking me for coming to their show and entertaining them and telling me what they liked about the show, what they didn't like. And I try to make time for all the fans, especially the Maritime wrestling fans, because honestly, if it wasn't for them, none of us would be around right now. This DVD would not be getting made. Tony Armstrong would just be some fat guy at SMU. New Scott would still be probably working at Canadian Tire, and I'd be at Shaw's. But we do this. This is everything we do. We do it for you guys because you're the ones that ultimately that have the final say in who makes money.
I think the I think that as a group, Maritime Wrestlers really closely sought and group of people. I think that's.
No. That arm is already. No, you already heard that.
I think that, especially with what happened this summer, is that it's brought the boys closer together. I think we're fair to the stance that without the fans, we don't have anything. Anyway, to one, make money, and two, we don't have an industry. We love the fact that fans are understanding around here of what goes on and that. And at the same time, the Maritime is a lot smarter than a lot of other territories, but still enjoy the fact that they sit down and watch wrestling instead of picking it apart and tearing the shit out of every little thing that
Our
happens.
fans aren't cynical, unlike in other territories I've been in, where people will pay their $10 to go to the show just so they can go home, go on the internet, and badmouth it.
Like
To me, it's a waste of $10.
Go to the show and then go home and go on the internet and badmouth it.
But I do that on MSN to you, so what's the difference?
And
No, but that's something that's happened a lot lately. You know, basically fans are paying money to not go and enjoy a wrestling show for what it is, but so they can cut holes in it and talk about how it sucked, which is really bullshit. I mean, if you're gonna spend your money, at least go and enjoy yourselves. And I'm glad that most of the Maritime fans can do that. And they can also go to newscott.com, www.newscott.com.
which links to a message board that he moderates.
No, I don't. Used to.
Well, I'd like to thank you both for your time this evening.
He needs me.
Where's our money?
Tony Armstrong,
Fucking money.
Every time I mention newscott.com, I want money. That one
Lincoln
counts.
Steen, thank you very much.
No problem, Newscott, anytime.
Hope
Oh, by
you.
the way, it's a birthday's coming up and you're going to be how old?
4.
4 years ago I gave birth to you.
How did that feel?
Unbelievable. You got a big head, it kind of hurt.
Thank you, you guys. Have a great night.
Yes.
Newscott video. Would you stop hitting me?
Did I make it on the tape? With this?
This?
Oh.
This is fucking funny. I didn't.